cheers to another episode of the Weinnotes Podcast. I'm your guide, AJ Weinzettel, on this journey of stories showcasing the people behind the wonderful world of wine, where we dive into conversations ranging from terroir, viticulture, to favorite music, superpowers, and more. Please enjoy this episode of the Weinnotes Podcast. Alban, thank you so much for taking time today to be on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yep.
Yeah, it's been a few years since I've been out here, but my very first trip, I was sitting at this exact table with Andrew Dirks, and it's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for being back.
Yeah. Before we get started, can I pour us a little bit of a blind wine?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've already said, told you this, but whatever you want to say about the wine, it is totally up to you. If you want to say it's yummy, yucky, great, or if you want to dive deeper, that's that is totally 100% your call. And then when we get toward the end, I'll reveal what it is, and so you have a little bit of time to kind of figure out.
Yeah, finish my coffee.
Yeah. Well, that is cool. And I always try to find some sort of connection. And I will say the connection on the wine itself for this, probably pretty weak.
Oh, yeah?
I couldn't find a wine that spoke to you that I could find that was like, hey, yeah, this is my jam. So when I interviewed Thomas earlier this year, I meant to pour him a Chardonnay because he's a big Chardonnay guy. And I grabbed the bottle right before the podcast, and look at that, it's a Pinot Noir. Darn it!
Are those wines that you personally own that you've purchased over the years and that's sitting in your cellar, and you're kind of selecting through that library depending on who you're interviewing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can see why maybe it was a bit more difficult with me then.
It was a little bit more difficult.
For sure.
So, go ahead.
No, I didn't have. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Going back to my very first time sitting at this table. I had no idea what I was expecting. Andrew was sitting on the other side, poured a little bit of champagne, and I always have my little journal, taking notes and everything. And so he said, "Come on, I want to show you something." So I left my journal and everything sitting here, and then to go to the underground, barrel cave was just blew me away. And I'll never forget it. It was just absolutely amazing.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we try to do that. There's very few people know about us, and so one day I think we really try to make the most of that first impression. And so we're very aware. And Andrew really has that skill of being an incredible storyteller, and he likes a bit of theater too. So he really made the most of this space. And so for the first 18 to 24 months, that experience that you had was the experience that everyone had. We've moved away from it more recently, but we've talked about maybe bringing it back because, you start here, and this was intended. The intent of this room is a conference room, but people you come here and you've made an appointment to taste, and you sit down here and the table is set, and so I think it's a perfectly reasonable expectation to think that this is going to be the tasting, but always breaking expectations and playing with contrasts is what we've tried to do since we started here hosting people. It's a nice building. I think it's pretty obvious to most people when you show up. It's a new winery. It's a nice one, but we're really always trying to show people things that they would not quite expect from walking into a place like this. Yeah, so it's always been the idea.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely phenomenal. And kind of going back into your history, you know, you grew up with, growing up, you would visit your grandparents in the Loire Valley, and you would visit wineries with them at a very, very early age. And I'm just curious, have you been able to like share some of the wine that you've made with them?
Yeah, so my whole family is from the west of France. My mother specifically is from the Loire Valley. Her father, retired engineer, had a cellar, was a bit of a kind of small-time wine collector. And yeah, during the summer, I would spend months with them. So in Chinon, we would spend a lot of time in Chinon, which is just outside of Tours. Mm-hmm. So in the Loire Valley, we'd spend a lot of time visiting cellars, and yeah, my grandfather would buy much wine, and sometime would share barrels with friends, and so we do a lot of kind of hand bottling and so on. And so I haven't made wine with my grandfather. Those wines were made by local vignerons that he would buy, and we would maybe just do some bottling with them. And then separately, my father's father had a small vineyard, and so I have helped when I was a kid in the vineyards, kind of hedging and things like that. But yeah, there was no commercial winemaking in my family,
right?
And so there were no wines that we made to taste, really. There was just a lot of work around wine and a lot of touching wine and vines, and there was most of the relationship with wine was just trying to understand it, and a lot of drinking and eating, and long lunches, long dinners, and all the reverence and all the stories and all of the meaning that goes into wine.
Right.
That's really what. It's hard not to be curious about it when it's this thing that's literally at the center of the table, and that's being passed around and talked about and enjoyed throughout, and with a lot of intention. When a bottle is open, it's because it's going to go well with the food, because it's ready to drink, because it carries so much meaning and carries values, it carries history, culture, tradition, and so on. So when all of those conversations are being had, and they just stem from that one bottle of wine, it's pretty loaded, and so it's hard for it not to pique your curiosity, especially if, like me, you grew up really liking cooking and eating and things like that, and it's something that can taste good.
Right.
So yeah, it was always interesting, for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Have you been able to? Is your grandfather still around, or your grandparents still around, to be able to say, "This is a wine that I made"?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of two is. One of two is not so much anymore. Not so much anymore. We don't have much of those older wines that were there were relationships with in the family at the time. But yeah, no, not so much.
Okay.
Those wines are kind of behind us at this point.
Yeah. No, I was just kind of curious, like if you took like a bottle of Abbott Claim and said, "I made this," to see like.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. Was I able to share those wines with my family?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've absolutely done that. I've absolutely done that. It's my mother, uncle, like people who were passionate about a wine, and in a very simple way. There was no big time fancy wine collecting in my family. There was humble wine collecting and a wine passion. Very locally minded.
Right.
Wherever my parents grew up or wherever I grew up, we were just kind of discovering the few wineries around us, and just on the weekend it would just be outings, going to see wineries. But anyway, being able to go back to France and talk with those same people who kind of got me interested in wine, my uncles and mother, and being able to share some wine and talk about the wines we make here, it's definitely interesting.
Oh, I can imagine.
I think it's they're very interesting conversations, especially since us French people don't drink a whole lot of wines that aren't French.
Right.
So it's really quite interesting to talk about American wine. It's definitely a bit of a curiosity of a topic for family members. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, I can only imagine that, your relatives were very proud of you to come over here and be able to, make your own wine, and, that's got to make you feel pretty good.
Yeah, it's nice to share for sure. There's interesting conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. And while you were over in France, before you moved over to the States, that's where you met your wife.
That's correct. Yeah. So I was studying in Burgundy. I was studying viticulture and winemaking in Burgundy, and I met Leah in 2011. Quite randomly. She's American from Hawaii. She was visiting and actually living in Burgundy by then, and we just kind of met randomly, met Leah, and we got married in Burgundy, in Dijon, when I finished my studies, shortly before moving to Oregon, actually. I mean, I guess in our mind, we're not really moving to Oregon. We're just kind of traveling to Oregon and for a short period of time. No, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is cool. And so you're just kind of traveling to Oregon, and how did you end up choosing Oregon?
A few factors. In a short period of time, and ended up kind of making it happen for me. So I was finishing my studies in Dijon, finishing the DNO, Diplôme National d'Œnologue. It's the National Enologic Diploma in France. It's what Thomas has as well. That's how we met. Thomas Sav from Lingua Franca. That's how we met and became good friends when we were both studying there. I was finishing my studies, and there were a few things. I was doing harvests before the end of my studies. In 2012, I was working harvests with the Drouhin family in Beaune, Maison Joseph Drouhin, with the Drouhin family. I was working with them in Beaune at the time. Thomas Savre from Lingua Franca had just come back from California from doing an internship at Gallo. And we were friends, and he was telling me about his experience, and I was asking him about it because I had just met Leah, who was going to be my wife and who happened to be American and from Hawaii, but had studied in Southern Oregon in Ashland. So she knew people in Oregon. She has some family in Portland, actually, and she had some friends who were working and living in Portland. And so Thomas was just coming back from California, and I was asking him about what he thought, how he thought I should look at trying to do harvest in the U.S. the following year in 2013. And I was asking about California more specifically, and he was telling me, forget about California. I'm going to Oregon next year. You should come to Oregon.
Wow.
And so, like, okay, Oregon. So just kind of start looking. Internet, Oregon, like, okay, Beaufrère, Archery Summit, just a bunch of wineries pop up. But I was just about to start working harvest with the Drouhin family in Beaune at the time, and as I get into kind of that situation, I quickly realized that I met Véronique Drouhin there, and I quickly realized and learned that they happened to own a winery in Oregon, and they had owned a winery in Oregon since the mid '80s in Dundee, and so it just kind of all happened like that. Thomas comes back from California, tells me that I should really consider going to Oregon. I had just met Leah, American, who's going to be my wife. Didn't know that at the time. But she had ties to Oregon, had studied there, has family and friends here. And I was about to do harvest with the Drouhin family, who happened to own this winery here. So kind of worked like that. And after a few months at Maison Joseph Drouhin, Véronique very kindly asked me if I'm interested in coming to do harvests in Oregon for the following year. And so, it sounds like I should say yes, I suppose, since everything is telling me that I should do that. So I did. And summer 2013, right after I graduate, I kind of set up the internship here, and I come here and with Leah, and just never really left. And that's also the year that Thomas came to do his first harvest at Evening Land at the time. And like me, it also translated for him into a kind of full-time position, and I'm just stuck around.
Yeah, no, that is pretty cool. And then you spent some time at White Rose.
Yeah, so that's how the chronology kind of goes. I was finishing harvests at Domaine Drouhin in Dundee with Veronique and Aaron, and by then I had filed an application for a green card. I was married to an American. I was married to an American girl, and I was meeting a bunch of people, and I was realizing. I mean, we had lunch during harvest with what am I trying to say here? We were realizing that. I was just realizing how dynamic the valley was. There was a lot of things going on. And Veronique, I mean, I was starting to express an interest in maybe sticking around.
Right.
And Veronique just wanted to help me, so she kind of connected me with a few people. I connected with a few people by the end of harvest. I had this green card application in process that would allow me to live and work here. And meeting people, Veronique kind of writing me this very nice letter of recommendation that I was able to kind of take around, and she had personally introduced me to a few people. I had just met Jacques Lardière, who was the longtime winemaker at Louis Jadot. 2013 is the year that Jadot bought Resonance. Mm-hmm. I was hunting Jacques like crazy to get what is now Guillaume's job at Resonance, but I was really interested. And Jacques happens to also be from Vendée, which is where my father is from. So we kind of, I had just met Jacques in Oregon. I just met with a bunch of people, and Veronique was kind of helping me and pushing me and getting me just all motivated about the possibility of staying here.
Right.
I think just honestly, ultimately, I think it's really kind of in a strange way, Veronique's kind of love for this place, because she really loves Oregon.
Right.
She really loves Oregon. I mean, I've heard her many times say that if she could, she would move here. I don't know. It was really contagious, and I just kind of started, and I just met a lot of very, very nice people. I'm a proper outsider, right? I don't really belong here, a lot of people didn't really care. They were just really interested in. I don't know. It seems like despite not speaking, perfect English and having an experience that doesn't quite, this whole like France academic, culturally, it's a very different angle into wine versus here the landscape and that people get into wine and for often different reasons and also the general outlook on it is also a little different. The culture is different. Despite that, it was just a lot of opportunities or people at least seemingly were very welcoming and after a month or so of taking a break for Christmas and kind of reaching out to a bunch of people, Greg Sanders, the idiosyncratic owner at White Rose, was crazy enough to kind of just take a chance on me and kind of carve out a spot, kind of create a position for me. So I ended up working for a couple of years with Jesus Guillen, who was the winemaker there for many years. Working with Jesus for over 2 years, and his brother Dago and his father Jesus Senior, and it was a pretty special experience for sure. And for me, again, as a outsider, young French guy who had never really been into the US, and now suddenly you're working in a very small family-owned winery. Very idiosyncratic is one way of describing White Rose. It's quite a unique place.
Yes.
In many aspects, and it's very, very small team, and the relationships there just became very important. I mean, again, I was talking about Jesus Guillen, the winemaker. His brother Dago still runs the sales and the hospitality, the direct to consumer. He's the person who really hosts people there every day and sells wine. And their father was farming the vineyards before Greg bought it, and still farms today. And so this very, I don't know, it was quite unique for me to suddenly live on the West Coast in Oregon, being involved in making wines in the Dundee Hills, which was kind of this, everything was so different. It was very exotic. And spending a lot of time with, family of immigrants from Mexico, and just making really meaningful, just making friends. I mean, the relationship with the Guillen family was quite unique, and it has impacted me a lot when I arrived in Oregon. I think just as much as the first 6 months doing harvest at DDO, it was still kind of the Drouhin bubble. It was still there was Veronique and her parents there. Yeah, Robert was there throughout harvest, and it was just there was a couple other French interns, and it was kind of somewhat a piece of. It was still very comfortable. There was a piece of France in Oregon. It was a bit of a bubble,
right.
But then working at White Rose for 2 years was exotic. That was different, and that really also had a big impact on me in terms of understanding the culture, what the wine industry means in the U.S. Because this word of wine industry is kind of unique to. We don't. In France, it doesn't quite have the same connotation, and it's not described the same way. But this whole industry, just understanding what that means, and who are the people in the industry, and why are they in the industry, and how do they see their place, and how do they interact with wine, and what drew them there, and then when you layer the whole immigration vineyard workforce, and when you spend time with the Guillens and Jesus Senior, and I mean it's a very unique industry. A lot of depth and layers, and it was just very impactful for me to get to build those relationships and meet a lot of people during that time.
I can imagine, and Jesus, I mean, had such an impact on the Oregon community in so many ways.
Yeah, I mean, not enough nice things to say about Jesus as a person.
Yes.
Really an incredible person. I think just about anyone who's ever met him or known him always just says the same thing. It's just nice, like how nice of a person he was,
right.
How kind of a person he was. I think something that absolutely everyone who's ever known Jesus just agrees on.
Yeah.
And unique person, working in a unique winery with a very unique setup with the family and ownership, and the small family owned, and the vision that Greg Sanders always imprinted on the winery, and Jesus' role in making those wines, working 2 years with Jesus was really impactful for me, for sure.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, many aspects.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, can you just help me understand you were talking about, the U.S. wine industry and how it's totally different in France.
Mm-mm.
Can you kind of try to explain that a little bit?
Yeah. I cannot guarantee how eloquent it's going to be, but
no elegance needed.
But I can give it my best shot. Let's see. Well, Well, when I was saying, the way I came to wine was in the most boringly French way, or in the most, it would apply for the old world in general. For I think any Italian, Spanish, whoever will also kind of relate to that. And I'm sure Thomas came to wine the same way I came to wine. There's nothing unique about it. It's just that it's a secular tradition. It's an old beverage. It's as old as civilization, and
right.
It's as old as Europe. And so it's like going. It's like going in the morning and buying bread for the day. Every day you just go and you buy bread every morning, and you just eat that during the day, and then the morning after you'll go buy more bread. And so the wine thing is the same. And so it's ingrained to a level. It's ingrained into European culture at a level it just doesn't you cannot dissociate it from European culture, right? So you're just born into this stuff, whether. Right. It's just part of it's just kind of part of the makeup of society, because wine is literally as old as civilization. So it even though we don't think about it, it's kind of the thing as well in Europe. It's the fact that it's there. It's actually an important part of culture.
Right.
But we don't even think about it too much, because it's like bread. It's normal. It's kind of a commodity. It's just a thing that's there. And so, but it's really important. It carries so much. It carries centuries of tradition and of culture, centuries of values, it tracks history, and it's just absolutely loaded with meaning. And so if that meaning is presented in a, if it's presented to you while you grow up, again, for me, always liked eating, always liked cooking, happened to be that in my family there were people who had a passion for it, and ended up just really having a real interest in sharing wine. And even if you don't have a passion for it, there's always an interest for wine in France. There just is. It's something that people know about and always have opinions about. Everyone has opinions about wine, right? Because you have to have opinions about wine.
Right.
French people have to have opinions about most things, especially things that they don't know about. But in this case, we feel like we have to know about it. We own the thing.
Right.
We don't really, but it's something that's important to us, and we should have opinions about it. So it's always, it's something that you just can't escape. And if there's something in you that's gonna allow you to be a bit more interested than average, and if it's a context where wine is a bit more present than average, I think you just end up kind of that interest just end up being there, and it can turn into a more powerful one.
Right.
But it's just a very foundational thing. It's not a specialty product.
That makes sense.
It's not an exotic specialty product.
Right.
In the US, it largely is. It's largely a specialty product. It's a luxury product in many ways.
Right.
In many situations, it's a luxury product. It's a status symbol. It's an object of speculation. It doesn't hold the same. It doesn't quite hold the same meaning as it does in Europe. And so, my interest in wine personally is simply because every time you open a bottle of wine, there's so much talk about, you're talking about where it was made at a very specific level, in very granular terms.
Right.
What grape allowed that wine to become what it is, or that place to become wine, and what the people do to handle this whole equation, and why do they do it this way, and the reason why they do it this way, and why it's this variety that's planted there is pretty, it kind of tracks back a long time, and in a different region, those different varieties and that different approach it's cultural, right? And that's the whole cultural and social aspect of terroir, is this kind of tradition, history, and so on. It kind of stems into it and seeps way down and gets digested over generations, and so it's kind of this deep layer cake that you get to interact with when you start learning about wine when you're in France, and it's very close to home, and it's very personal, it's very cultural. Here it's a much younger occurrence in the US, of course. I mean, I'm not going to go do the history again, but kind of European immigrants, and then prohibition, and then post-prohibition, and so on. And it's always been seen as it's more of an exogenous product to this system.
Right.
It just is. And so people interact. There's more distance between people. Naturally, there's more distance. So the relationship you have with wine, I think, in the US is you come to it as it's either a product that you can make, so the result of a craft, or the product that you can manufacture using technique, processes, intellect. It can be considered as a product that you can sell, that you can market, that you can get people to buy, that you can actually imagine before it even exists. You can conceptualize it more.
Right.
What else? The wine is, it's a luxury product. It's a status symbol. It just ends up being this, or it can also be something very, very, very much from the New World, and dare I say very American. It's also kind of wine can be a vehicle for kind of creative outlets for some people as well. People will see wine as a medium to express an idea.
Right.
People, and a lot of those people could do very well just doing like something else. Like they could be artists. They could use a different medium. Unfortunately, I think using wine as a medium to express concepts is it's not the purpose of wine. It's not the reason it really exists, and it's not its reason of being. It's first and foremost, it's an agricultural product.
Great.
But some people will just kind of come to it, and I know some of those people. I've worked with some of those who will kind of see, and it always makes for very interesting conversations and interesting businesses, but who see wine as a vehicle for an idea to impact people.
Right.
Maybe it's something that says something about them, who are behind the product, but it's not so much about the technical process. It's definitely not about the agriculture. It's definitely not about trying to allowing wine to express something about place, time, people, something that's more meaningful than your idea, 2024, or whatever it is, 21st century. I've got this, this concept I really want to express. Wine is an exciting vector, an exciting medium through which I can shape and I can shove a bunch of ideas and meaning into wine, and I can put that to market, and people can kind of agree with me or be impressed by what I've made and what I've thought about and how my angle, my whole, I think a little gimmicky sometimes, that approach. And expecting wine to do that it's possible, but it's just not. Wine can carry so much more meaning, and that's what got me. Ultimately, wine, again, it's the story of. It's a much bigger story than a single generation or someone just showing up. It's much bigger than an entrepreneurial spirit. So I completely butchered that word, but or a cool idea or a creative. It's not. It's much more than that. It tells stories of generations and generations worth of human lives and of just evolution and geological history, civilization, plants life, obviously, trying to figure out its place in this whole thing. But anyways, so yeah, it's I would say it's just a very fundamental difference, which is kind of a cultural fundamental difference.
Yeah, and I can see that, and it helps me see a clearer picture. I mean, I kind of had that sense, but just I'm always constantly learning over here, so I'm just trying to learn myself.
Yeah,
and it's I can see in our emails back and forth before the interview, how thoughtful you were, and just making sure that everything was going to be set up correctly, and it kind of reminds me of when I think it was in 2016 you were making wine for chapter 24 00, and you were helping out Thomas as well. And during all that chaos, you got an email from Anthony Beck. And you were seeing that email, and you're like, there was so much sincerity in the email, but you were deep into harvest, and you just didn't have the time to give it the attention that you wanted to give it. And, so you replied and say, hey, I'm really busy, and I'll get back to you in a week or so. Where do you think that down-to-earth humbleness came from? Is that just your upbringing, your family, or just...
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I'll definitely take humbleness and down-to-earth. I don't know how you knew about that piece, that story about the email and so on, but that's mostly factual, and I'm happy to go back through it. I suppose. I mean, we take no credit for that. It's just upbringing. I don't know. We're just
Right.
we're just.
It's just part of who you are.
mean, I've got 2 kids. I've got a constant debate with my wife about nature versus nurture, but I think that's nurture. That's just It's my parents. I don't know. I was brought up in a way, I was to be, nice to people and polite, and I grew up an introvert, and good. I think empathy is important. Trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes is something that I think is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Being able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. What parts of that story did I get wrong?
Earlier about the little anecdote?
I don't think so, no.
About the anecdotes about the email and the whole thing?
Well, I mean, I heard about the email and whatnot.
Yeah. No, it was not during harvest. It was simply I mean, I guess so. In terms of the chronology of it all. So after working for Waitrose, Mark Tarloff, lawyer turns movie producer, who had created Seven Springs, Evening Land rather, sorry, who had leased Seven Springs and started Evening Land in 2007, trying to bring in Christophe Roumier to make the wines at the time. And after Christophe said no, he went after Dominique Lafont, who said yes. So, I mean, I'm not going to do this whole story again, but Marc, Evening Lands, then leaves to start Chapter 24 and 00 quickly thereafter. Mm-hmm. Marc hired me in 2016 from White Rose to primarily make 00. So at the time, it was still the original kind of 00 that he had imagined with. So the first winemaker for 00 was Mikey Etzel.
Right.
Consulting from Louis-Michel Liger-Belair from Vosne Romanée. When I was brought on, that first kind of phase of the project was kind of behind us, and we started making some Chardonnay as well on top of the Pinot, all the hand-snipped Pinot Noir fermented in amphoras and so on. We're still sourcing grapes from the same vineyards, but the project was kind of changing shape a little bit. And yeah, actually on Thomas' recommendation, Marc, Ryan Hannaford, came after me when I was working at White Rose and offered me the 00 job, which I took. I was 25 years old. I thought I could, I was enthusiastic and motivated and fearless. And Marc was like, "Well, you have to make the best wines in this." It's just, I'm talking about, this is not that's. Those things were the kind of from Marc, they were the setup, but it's you just have to take those things with a grain of salt, with perspective. But from his mouth, it's from what he believed, and what he really had set out to do with this was to, in his mind, make the best wines in Oregon, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but it really meant something to him, and he had an idea there. He had a vision. Can't take that away from Marc. He had visions. He was an incredible creative, an incredibly intelligent guy. And those bottles were priced out of the gate at $300 bottle, and that made a splash at the time in the Oregon wine industry. And he definitely took was quite a bit of backlash at the time, but Marc was an outsider through and through. Mm-hmm. He didn't care too much about what people thought of him. But that was kind of the setup, the premises for this whole thing. It was like, Alban, you gotta make those wines. You gotta,
Right.
Okay. Yeah. That's so. And they wanted to hire in 2016. When they hired me, they also wanted to hire a new consultant, Pierre Milman, who is a consultant in Europe, and who I happen to know because he teaches classes every year in Dijon for the enology masters. So both Thomas and I knew him, and so yeah, Pierre and I started working together at 00 in 2016, and then I worked for a year, and I had no intention of leaving. I mean, I loved working with Marc. I loved working with Chris Herman. Right. Chris and I became good friends, and we had an absolute blast. I mean, I loved working with Ryan Hannaford, who was the VM manager at the time for Chapter 24. Used to be the VM manager for Evening Land before then. Was farming for Evening Land with Jessica Cortel, and then moved with Marc Tarloff to when Marc started Chapter 24. Ryan is now the winemaker at Racine in California, the Monty and Rodolphe Peters project in California. But anyhow, it was crazy. I mean, it was just kind of insane startup of a company. It was basically an insane wine startup.
Right.
There was a cloud of unknown investors there were consultants moving around, Pierre Milman from Burgundy and Pedro Parra, Chilean terroir consultants. Ryan was there. Ryan was, at the time, still is, but, kind of crazy, young, early 30s Australian man. Very hardworking, one of the hardest working person I've ever met and worked with, just a force of nature. Felipe Ramirez. Felipe is still is here and is now the winemaker for Rose and Arrow, which is what remains from that whole group of people. What that whole business has morphed into is Rose and Arrow today, really. And so Felipe still makes those wines, but that's the year Felipe started as well. So it was kind of this crazy startup. You have this Chilean guy coming, Felipe, Pedro Parra, consultant from Chile as well. Pierre, myself, Ryan, Mark, and all the media and Psalms and whatever. It's kind of madness. But it was amazing. I mean, for me, I was 25. I was enthusiastic. I had a lot of energy, a lot of ideas. I was working with Pierre, it was really easy to work with him. I was working with Ryan, Felipe, made friends for life. And just worked really hard with just unreasonably high standards and did some weird things that we thought was a good idea to do in terms of winemaking. And made wines for 00. We started a brand called Alit at the time, and that still exists. So that I was also responsible for that. So I was responsible for 00 and for the Alit wines, which was another new wine that Mark had imagined.
Right.
Still exists. Thank God, it still exists. We're just having a lot of fun, and it was incredibly stimulating and incredibly motivating and incredibly rewarding. And
So so you got that email from Anthony.
Yeah.
And you met with him, and you had zero desire to move, positions or jobs.
Yeah.
What?
How it happened is in February or March of 2017, Mark Tarloff was in town for the week. It was in the Valley for a week with buyers and journalists. We had Pedro Parra was here from Chile. Pierre was here the whole week from Burgundy. Mm-hmm. And so we're tasting, blending, visiting vineyards, doing tastings. We had one of those weeks where it was one of those weeks where you just we were just kind of working out of our minds and going crazy and doing just kind of making plans and just trying to change the wine world and reinvent the wheel and just do everything that we were supposed to do. I get this long email from Anthony. Anthony Beck, pulled the email, it's just amazing. And I'm Anthony Beck. I own this winery called Angela Estate. And he mentioned that, so he got my email because he asked, kind of through people he knew, he ended up reaching out to Véronique Drouhin, who Véronique recommended me to him. Right. She knew I had a job where I was. But anyway, I was very, very busy this week. It was kind of crazy. And I saw this long email from Anthony, and I saw that there was a recommendation. This stemmed from a recommendation from Véronique. Right. I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is long. This is loaded. You ask, there's a lot of interesting questions here, and it's kind of, it was, definitely offering, basically saying that there's interested in talking about a job here. It's like, okay, well, very long and thoughtful email, and I definitely owe you a proper answer, and I don't have time to give it to you right now. So I just sent a very quick note, right, and said, Mr. Beck, let me get through this week, and I'll take the time to kind of give you an answer that kind of commensurates with the email I received, right? So then I just answered him. I looked up what the winery owned was. That was called Angela Estate, and he said he owned a vineyard called Abbott Claim that he had purchased from Ken Wright. So I just kind of looked this up, and I'm like, okay, well, another Oregon winery. There are many wineries in Oregon. I think at the time there were 700 or 800 wineries in Oregon, and this definitely seemed like another one, another winery. Just nothing wrong with that. So that's great. Many wineries, but definitely perfectly in the mold. It was in the box.
Right.
It was, perfectly fine. Okay, well, fine. I just wanted to, I replied in the most thoughtful way I could, in the most polite way I could, and I thought, well, first because I have nothing to lose, I thought I should meet him, and the reason why I really said yes, I didn't want to leave Double Zero. I was having a blast. Loved the people there. We were very proud of the wines we were making. We felt like we were doing something kind of special. In a little crazy bubble. I mean, absolutely a bubble, but still felt good inside the bubble. It was good.
Right.
But yeah, the fact that he dropped Veronique's name, the thing is that what I could not do was to not take a recommendation from Veronique through. Like, that's just not something that I could do, because it's the relationship that probably ends up being the most meaningful to my little kind of short, meaningless wine career so far. So she really, she made me feel like I mattered back in Burgundy. Like the way I tasted with her and her father and the winemaker there, like just her in the room and allowing me into the conversations, and she's really, everyone who knows Veronique, just the nicest person in the industry, and she just the level of the way she kind of folded me in, just because that's just what she does. That's just what she would do to anyone. It just meant a lot to a little kid at the time doing house in Burgundy at Maison Joseph Drouhin. And then the fact that she really allowed me to be in Oregon, and then made me feel at home, and then connecting with a bunch of people, and she motivated me and introduced me and recommended me, and the job at a White Rose I got because she wrote this very nice letter that I was able to use and she also, when I was working at a White Rose, she recommended me to Jean-Nicolas Méot when Jean-Nicolas started Nicolas J.
Right.
When Jean-Nicolas started Nicolas J, I think first vintage was 2013 probably, or 2014, made at Adelsheim. He was looking for a winemaker in 2015, I think, and Veronique recommended me to him. So they were interviewing a small set of people. And so same thing, like she didn't have to do that. She was like, hey, you really should talk to Alban. I didn't get the job. He told me, he and Jay told me they thought I was too young at the time. I was 24 years old, I think. So maybe they were right. They hired Tracy Kendall, who's amazing. That went very well, obviously.
Yeah.
So all for the better, anyways. But just Veronique, like when I've got someone like this who reaches out, and Veronique went out of her way to actually, to drop my name and say, like, there's, I was the one person he was talking to in Oregon, just because Veronique kindly enough just gave him my name. So I just had to do right by her, and I had to meet the guy. I had zero expectations, no interest in leaving the job. Expectations were actually measured. I had no expectations, and I just met him out of pure courtesy towards him and towards Veronique, really. And so over a weekend, I took a plane and went to Anthony's thoroughbred horse farm in Kentucky, where he lives. Anthony's a British citizen. Right. Anthony's a British citizen, was born and raised in Great Britain, around London and Oxford. Very few people know that. Most people think he's South African. His family happened to also have been living in South Africa for quite some time and have been working in South Africa for a long time and have owned a large winery in South Africa since the mid-80s called Beck.
Right.
So Anthony, after having been brought up in the UK, moved to South Africa in his 20s and then lived quite a bit of his life in South Africa until marrying an American and settling in Kentucky. And so his family had been in the thoroughbred industry and in the wine industry for some time. So anyway, Anthony has been living at that absolutely spectacular, gorgeous, incredible thoroughbred horse farm in Kentucky called Gainesway, that his family have been owning for some time now. 1,500 acres outside of Lexington.
Wow.
Just a gorgeous place, really special. And had no expectations. But so I took a plane for a weekend to go meet Anthony. And then, spend the weekend with him, basically, at Gainesway. And we just basically kind of chatted for 2 days and really hit it off. And
that's something.
we just became, as Anthony says all the time, we hide each other. We kind of, because I mean, he's right. As much as, I mean, in all fairness, as much as he was interviewing me, I also kind of was interviewing him, because I mean, from what I had learned about the pre-existing project and Angela Estate and Vineyard and so on, I was like, okay, well, let's say that there was no standard feature that would draw me to that project particularly. There was nothing pre-existing that got me incredibly. That just, that really stood out to me.
That makes sense. Did you know that he was part of Lytle Barnett at that time?
Let me get that chronology correctly. I don't even think it had a name yet.
It might not have. I mean, the first vintage for Lytle Barnett was 2013.
Yeah, but it was bottled, not labeled yet, and no, I didn't know when I met him, and it was so small. It was never part of the conversation. His kind of small, his domestic sparkling wine partnership.
Right.
But no, it was just about. So Anthony and I hit it off just on a cultural level. He's British.
Okay.
Greg Sanders, he just kind of at White Rose just really allowed me in there. He just carved out a position for me and took a chance on me and took me seriously.
Right.
And so did Jesus. Like those, I was 23 years old, and they took me seriously. Like it was stimulating. And 000, same thing. Quickly thereafter, I got taken. Mark Tarloff was just the very fearless people to hire a kid with almost no experience. Entrusting that person to kind of have a key role in a very ambitious project, and it's kind of a nuts way of operating in many ways. I mean, you would never see this in France or in Europe.
Right, and your explanation of wine and culture compared to here, it sounds like the connection between you and Anthony was much more along that cultural basis of which you were used to.
Yeah, and so working for White Rose and for 00 Chapter 24, it was very stimulating, and it was fast-paced, and it was concepts filled, and it was incredibly interesting and stimulating, and allowed me to learn so much so fast because I did so many things with a lot of independence and leeway. And then when I met Anthony, I was like, wait a minute, someone with a multi-generational outlook, family owned, really owned by one person, him, with who I just kind of see eye to eye on just about everything.
Right.
Who's telling me that he'll do what I think we should do, basically, on me, in kind of all aspects. And so, I'm like, oh wow, the startup was a lot of fun, and I learned the kind of this crazy kind of startup environments I was in was incredible. But here's something that I kind of forgot to existed for a minute.
Right.
He is the Drouhin family. He is this kind of long, patient, painstaking, one step at a time outlook.
Right.
Someone who knows what it takes to build something, because he's built wineries and Thoroughbred. They used to own Thoroughbred farm in South Africa as well. I mean, they've been in that business. It's a long, painstaking, slow-growing business.
Right.
And it's about the people, and it's about long-term vision, and it's about patience, and it's about just kind of quiet, hard work, not about loud, fast-paced ideas. Ultimately, that's not what got me into wine in the first place. That was fun when you're young.
Correct.
But anyway, meeting Anthony was like, oh yeah, I forgot that existed, and I think that person is a genuine one, is a genuine person, and I think everything I've heard is genuine. And it was kind of a big bet on my end, because anything I saw that pre-existed, that I didn't really believe in most of it. I didn't see a lot of value in most of it. I just saw the value in a few fundamental things, and in Anthony, and in kind of his commitment and behavior, and just in the relationship that we saw between each other. And so, yeah, after a couple of days of spending time with him, I just agreed to the job, and so there was a few. The goal was to build a winery. The goal was to. I had heard that before. Make the best wines in the state. A lot of people. That's I think a few people have that ambition.
Right.
So can't hold it against them. It's great to be ambitious. It's just I question the meaning of best, and the meaningfulness of that endeavor, and what. Is it good? Is it bad? And is it really worth even thinking about? But
no, I think when I was here, a couple of years back, your ex Omni Chardonnay. I mean, that just blew me away. And ever since having that ex Omni, I noticed that, like, corollary, they have a Blanc de Blanc from there.
Yep.
Seth Morgan Long has a Chardonnay from there.
Yep.
And it kind of, allowed me to open up my eyes to that actual vineyard itself.
Yeah, it's a good vineyard.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what I was saying. But anyhow, the best. Yeah, sure. So the kind of the whole basis for that work relationship, the asks from Anthony was, we're going to build a winery. You have to make the best wines in the state, and we have to find a new piece of vineyard property outside of Abbott Claim. Like, those were the three kind of, here you go. Go back to Oregon.
Right.
See you next month. And that was it. So that's what we did. I mean, that's what we did. So that was kind of, we didn't do that. So that was the idea. So just kind of came home and called Mark and Chris Herman, who had become 50% owner of 00 with Chapter 24. Two very different reactions from Mark and Chris, which was really fun. Mark needed closure, so he just kind of cut the ties pretty cold, which I perfectly appreciate. I mean, again, I really liked Mark Tarloff. I mean, I guess I don't know if you've heard much about Mark Tarloff over the
A little bit
just
here, a
like
little bit there.
anecdotal. Maybe I don't know who you've interviewed and if anyone has ever talked about Mark. I might just a couple of words. I mean, Mark, it might be worth. Mark was definitely a controversial, so passed away a few years ago from, I believe, thyroid cancer. Mark was a controversial figure in the wine industry. A bit of a kind of crazy shooting star, I think. Mostly misunderstood person. I think a great person. Very intelligent man. Great. I loved working with him. Very demanding, hard to work for. Very fast. Yeah, very demanding but very, very stimulating, very rewarding. Just very stimulating conversations. Incredible mind. But yeah, Mark had this vision back in the mid-2000s of starting this winery, this wine project that would straddle California, Oregon, and Burgundy. And he thought that Christophe Roumier should be the French name. It's more than a consultant. It's not about technique. It's not about technical consultancy. It's about being able to attach a shiny name to it. Really, ultimately, the best.
Right.
And so, but Christophe said no. And so Dominique Lafont, I think, was probably Mark's second approach, and Dominique went for it. And yeah, in 2007, they started making wines under the label of Evening Land. And I'll always remember when I tasted 2007 Summum Chard, that first Chardonnay that came out of that first vintage of Evening Land that was made by Isabelle Meunier with consultancy of Dominique, and was Mark's first year kind of creating that whole project. And that wine, that top Chards, I tasted that with Thomas a couple of times when Thomas was working there and living there. Crazy. That's when you know that, what Chardonnay can be in Oregon, that was a good. And I know that wine did that to not just me. I mean, Walter Scott would not exist without Mark Tarloff and Chapter 20, and Evening Land, rather. But anyways, to give credit to Mark, I mean, whatever people who don't know Mark think of him, the Willamette Valley owe him quite a bit. And the Willamette Valley owes him quite a bit. And I don't think people really want to recognize it, but I don't really care. I just see it. Without Mark Tarloff, there would be no Evening Land. So Dominique Lafont would have come to Oregon.
Right.
Today, Evening Land is owned by Raj Parr and Sashi Morman.
Right.
That would not have been possible without Mark. Mark brought in Larry Stone to be the GM of Evening Land. Lingua Franca would not exist without Mark Tarloff.
Right.
So without Mark, there's no Walter Scott, there's no 00, there's no Evening Lands, there's no Lingua Franca.
There's probably no Lavinia either.
There's probably no Lavinia. There's no Rosanero. There's probably no Abbott Claim. Now it's not that it's yet incredibly meaningful into the landscape, but it's still one more thing that probably wouldn't exist without Mark.
Yeah. How would Walter Scott not exist?
Ken made his first wine experience was as Evening Land in the early days of Evening Land with Dominique Lafont and Isabelle Meunier and Mark Tarloff. Okay. He was selling the wines. He had worked in the winery, and I believe the very first wines made for Walter Scott were made at Evening Land, and he would have to correct that or not. But yeah, Walter Scott would not exist without Mark Tarloff and Evening Land. I mean, can absolutely. I mean, it's just the impact that Mark has had, and I'm missing things. I mean, someone like George Bergstrom. Like Bergstrom existed before, but I think I would not hesitate to say, and maybe Josh could confirm or not, but Josh's whole winemaking approach and ambition, I think he always was aware of what was happening, aware of what Mark was doing, and Dominique Lafont coming in and those wines being made, I think, had an impact on how Josh made wine, I think.
Right.
What else? There are. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many. Basically, what Mark did, from being this guy who lives in New York and comes to Oregon 3 or 4 times a year, just the ambition, the vision he had for what could be done here was crazy, and the things he did, bring the people over that he brought. Ultimately, in doing the crazy statesman, the $300 bottle, 00 thing, or whatever, all the new brands he would create here, and the new labels, and the people he would agglomerate and together to create these new projects.
Right.
Ultimately, it had so much influence on the last 15 years of the industry, in terms of its visibility, in terms of the quality of the wine, in terms of even Chardonnay being relevant, as relevant as it is today. I mean, Evening Land, Mark's Evening Land was absolutely foundational in this new wave of Oregon Chardonnay. I'm saying new because Oregon Chardonnay was made prior. I mean, there's a long track record of Irie making Chardonnay and so on. But what we know today as the contemporary Oregon Chardonnay landscape really basically exists because in 2007 there was Chardonnay made under the Evening Land label from Seven Springs with Dominique Lafont involved, and that's Mark's brainchild. And everything that stems from, I mean, Seth Morgan Long, there probably would not be a Morgan. What Seth is doing is also in that vein of it's I mean, if you look at the impact of Lingua Franca and Walter Scott and what Seth is doing, it's pretty huge, and so many things like that. So anyway, loved Mark. I just don't know if there was anything ever said about Mark, and I think he's mostly a misunderstood person. He has now passed away, and he's kind of a faint memory for people, and there's been a lot of criticism from people who've been here, who are insiders, people who are from here, and he's an outsider. So, and he always really enjoyed being an outsider, and he didn't care, and just really good person, really, really, really good person.
I've heard some good things about him.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but what was it? Your Ex Omni Chardonnay that just got 97 or 99 points or something?
Just this vintage from Decanter, Ex Omni got 97, and one of our Pinot Noirs got 99.
Okay.
Due north from the block that's the north-facing block in the vineyard. We get some good some good reviews recently, which is nice. Ex Omni is a vineyard owned by Craig Williams, who owns Ex Novo. And I started sourcing grapes from Ex Omni, sourcing Chardonnay from Ex Omni in 2017, which was my first year at Abbott. I mean, Abbott did not exist. Abbott Claim, the label, the brand did not exist before I arrived. The vineyard existed. There was a pre-existing brand called Angel Estate, named after Anthony's wife. And I saw Anthony's vision, but I didn't quite see a vehicle or a structure here that would allow for that vision to be fulfilled. So I just pitched to Anthony that what he should really be doing is something called Abbott Claim. Because you have a vineyard that has regional historical significance that is known. When I tasted during that weekend when Anthony hosted me in Kentucky, I tasted through a vertical of wines from Abbott Claim made by Ken Wright, and for me there was a very clear in those wines through line of personality. There was a very clear character that showed through the 10-year vertical of wines that had been made from that vineyard. Whether there were wines that Ken had made under the Angel label, or they were Ken Wright labeled Abbott Claim wines, didn't really matter. They all showed the character of this place. And so, after seeing this and after seeing the place and seeing the vineyard and digging a bunch of soil pits and building a general idea of how I was going to approach this whole conundrum, I just sat down with him and his wife Angela and told them, well, I don't think you should call it Angela. I think that's not a very good idea. And here's this idea. And so we did that. And at the same time, I also set out to start making Chardonnay, there was no Chardonnay planted here. And so I set out to start purchasing grapes. And so Exarny was the first vineyard that we started buying grapes from in 2017. So I got in touch with Craig, who was incredibly gracious to kind of allow me in because very much an in-demand site. He still has quite the wait list of people who wants to get in, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
Good for him. Craig is one smart guy. Amazing vineyard. He set out to plant and develop in ex novo and then in ex omni. Yeah. So 2017 ex omni was the first and only bottle we actually bottled and labeled under the Abbott Claim label back in 2017. And then since 2018, we've started making three different Pinot Noirs from the estate, and we've done that every year since, jumping over 2020, of course.
Very nice.
Ex omni, it's been kind of it's a thing for us. Today, we make 6 wines, 3 Pinot Noirs, 3 Chardonnays. The 3 Pinot Noirs are strictly from Abbott Claim vineyards. The 3 Chardonnays are from purchased grapes in the Willamette Hills. One is an Willamette Hills bottling, blend of several sites.
Right.
And then we also bottle Temperance Hill and ex omni on their own. So
very nice.
That's what we do.
Very nice. Well, now that you finished your coffee, do you want to
absolutely.
Take a stab at this?
Yeah.
If you want to say something, you can. It's totally up to you.
Yeah.
And I will say, as you were talking, maybe there's more of a connection here than I thought there might be.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a good bottle of wine. It's Oregon Chardonnay.
Yes.
But kind of narrows it down to very few possible wines. I don't know. I would have to think about it, I suppose, for a minute.
Yeah. Well, if you want to think about it, I do have a couple rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
And then I'll reveal what this is, and I'll get you out of here. Your favorite artist, music to listen to during harvest? That's a controversial question. But not anymore, I guess. So it's not controversial anymore. Well, if it's just you in the cellar, nobody else is in there, what are you listening to? Well, we got a really good part doing. No, we only do kind of instrumental music. I don't like pop music and stuff. I want to be able to kind of think during harvest. Yes. So I don't like crazy pop music and so on. So, in the morning usually we'll do a lot of very kind of old classical dusty stuff like Bach or Beethoven, Sonata number 32, Bach, Matthäus Passion, St. Matthew's Passion, things like that in the morning. And then in the evening, when we're trying to clean, things like Floating Points or Todd Terje, Swedish guy, or things a little bit more upbeat and fun. Very nice. Just a wide range of things. Your favorite indulgent food? My favorite indulgent meaning like guilty pleasure, or like a guilty pleasure. Yeah. Guilty pleasure. The stuff. I know that's gonna sound like an awful cliche, but just bread and cheese. That's all. I'll just eat that stuff ad nauseam. I'll eat it forever. Guilty pleasure. I love sweet. I love desserts. I just love cake. I love to bake and I love to eat. Yeah. Fresh fruit desserts type of thing. I don't know. I've got too many, I suppose. Too difficult to answer. A lot. All right. If you could choose a superpower, what would it be?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, some people want to fly, some people want to be able to be invisible, other people are like have the ability to move things with your mind.
Jesus.
I know, it's possibilities are just endless.
Yeah, I guess. It's gonna sound stupid too, but I guess being able to know exactly what to say to make people happy. I don't know, I've got 2 kids, so I feel like ultimately what would really matter to me is making sure that I say the right thing all the time.
Yeah,
So they really happy about being around. Is that the thing? So
that would be cool.
yeah.
Your harvest notes, are they digital or handwritten? Or it could be both.
Yeah, they're both. I don't take a lot of notes. But they mostly end up being. They're mostly a little bit handwritten, mostly internalized, and then eventually put on the computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Last book you read. It could also be like an audible book or a podcast or something like that.
French literature, In Search of Lost Time, Proust.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
I know
Okay.
that probably didn't give you too much time to
sorry.
think about that, but you
Okay,
know.
so yeah, it's a nice bottle of wine. Oh, that's tricky. That's difficult. It's one of the best Oregon Chardonnay I've tasted.
Yes,
Like this is really, I mean, it's obviously Oregon Chardonnay. Someone who did a very good job. So it's probably a very nice site too, because it tastes like it would be a very good vineyard. Texturally, it's quite very impressive, very, very impressive wine. Man, this is why. Yeah, this is why, people like Seth or Thomas or Ken or Josh or this is why people get really excited about Oregon Chard. I think this is the type of wine. So it would have to be in that. It could be. Yeah, I mean. So I guess I'll just go by process of elimination.
and you don't have to guess. I mean, really, there's no pressure. I mean,
man, it's really good. Willamette Hills, very, very nice Oregon Chardonnay. Man, the age is pretty incredible. I think it's maybe slightly older than I think it is. It's very, very cool. I mean, could it be like one of Thomas' wines, maybe a 2016 Bunker Hill from Lingua Franca, or maybe one of Thomas' earlier shards at Lingua Franca? I don't know if it's a wine I made at 00 in 16. I'm not quite sure. It smells pretty darn close, but there's also possibly some Evening Land wines that could taste like this. I don't think it's Walter Scott. I don't think it's Seth. I don't think it's Bergstrom. Yeah, I guess maybe one of those wines kind of close to. Yeah.
well, I almost did bring a Tamal wine, but the
Oh, it is Walter Scott.
Yeah.
Cool.
Talking about Ex Omni and bringing something from Ex Novo.
Man, it's an epic bottle of wine. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, unsurprisingly. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Ken is pretty good at what he does, for
he is.
sure.
Yeah.
And it is a very good vineyard.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I very much thank you for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, AJ. Yeah, really, really appreciate it. Thanks for, I'm just happy to have a chat. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you for joining me on this flavorful voyage through the world of wine on the Weinnotes Podcast. I've been your host and guide, AJ Weinzettel, and it's been an absolute pleasure sharing these captivating stories with you. But alas, like the last sip of a fine vintage, our time together must end. But don't fret, my wine-loving friend. The cellar doors of the Weinnotes Podcast will always remain open, waiting for you to return and explore new conversations, stories, and musings from the captivating people behind the magical world of wine. Before you go, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and don't forget to leave a sparkling 5-star review to help spread the word. Until our glasses clink again, remember to savor life's moments and let the spirit of wine and camaraderie linger on your palate. Cheers, and as always, may your wine glass be full, your heart be light, and your journey be delight.